Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Israel continues intense Gaza offensive. Significant casualties and displacement are reported. UK focuses on Palestinian statehood recognition. South Korea navigates North Korea relations. Kenyan athlete imprisoned in Ukraine. Financial hardship led to military recruitment. Afghanistan faces a worsening humanitarian crisis. Israeli strike in Lebanon results in fatalities. UN condemns Russian airspace incursions. Egyptian prisoner released after lengthy detention. Maduro seeks dialogue amid US tensions. Super Typhoon impacts East Asia. Trump demands prosecution of political rivals. Challenges arise in US-India tech relations. Israel intensifies Gaza City offensive amid rising casualties and civilian displacement. Recent developments in Gaza are dominated by Israel's intensified military operations targeting Gaza City, resulting in a significant escalation of casualties and widespread civilian displacement. The Israeli Defense Forces, EIDF, are focusing on securing Gaza City, which they characterize as a Hamas stronghold, conducting operations that have led to a surge in reported deaths and injuries. While the IDF claims to have neutralized numerous terrorists, preparing for attacks, and dismantled Hamas's military infrastructure, the precise number of casualties remains disputed. The civilian toll continues to rise dramatically, with hospitals in Gaza City reporting the arrival of nearly 50 bodies within the first 12 hours of Sunday. The Palestinian Health Ministry estimates that over the past 24 hours, 75 bodies and more than 300 injured individuals have reached medical facilities. It's crucial to note that the ministry does not differentiate between civilian and militant deaths. Following an evacuation order issued on September 9th, a substantial number of Palestinians, exceeding 500,000, have reportedly fled Gaza City, relocating to western parts of the city or seeking refuge in central and southern Gaza. The IDF's operations are characterized by the discovery of hidden explosives and the dismantling of Hamas's military infrastructure. The conflict's impact is being felt across Gaza, with hospitals struggling to cope with the influx of casualties and the disruption of services. The international community continues to express grave concerns regarding the humanitarian situation and the protection of civilians. The ongoing operations underscore the complexities and challenges of achieving a lasting resolution to the conflict. UK recognition of Palestinian statehood dominates news coverage. The UK's formal recognition of Palestinian statehood is the central theme across numerous British newspapers, with significant reactions and controversies surrounding the decision. Keir Starmer's move is widely reported, framed as Starmer's big Gaza gamble, and met with fierce criticism from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and families of hostages held by Hamas, who view it as handing Hamas its greatest prize. The Guardian describes the recognition as deeply symbolic, while the Daily Mirror positions it as the best hope for peace, showcasing damaged buildings in Gaza. The Financial Times highlights the coordinated action, with Canada and Australia also extending recognition. Hamas is consistently reported to be claiming victory. Alongside the Gaza situation, a memorial service for conservative activist Charlie Kirk dominated coverage, particularly among Republican circles. The event, attended by thousands and featuring a large stadium capacity, was described as a MAGA send-off. The Daily Telegraph focused on Reform UK leader Nigel Farage's pledge to deport hundreds of thousands of legal migrants, proposing stricter visa criteria. Several other stories garnered attention. A British Special Forces soldier was involved in a tragic incident, shot 7 times during a training exercise involving live ammunition instead of blanks, highlighting a Special Forces horror. A survey revealed the average British person can concentrate for only 14 minutes, while concerns were raised about the potential rebirth of ISIS within 24 hours, stemming from unrest in Syrian prison camps. The Daily Mail reported on a survey regarding attention spans, while the Daily Telegraph flagged a potential cancellation of the World Conquer Championships due to smaller than usual conkers caused by heat waves. The Daily Star focused on the ongoing grief surrounding the death of Jay Slater, reporting he is being tortured by TikTok detectives. The Daily Express highlighted the potential threat of ISIS. The overall tone reflects considerable division and concern, with the Palestinian statehood issue at the forefront of the media landscape. South Korea's pragmatic approach to North Korea amid shifting global dynamics. South Korea's president, Lee Jae-myung, has signaled a willingness to accept a Trump-Kim deal focused on a freeze of North Korea's nuclear weapons production, rather than immediate denuclearization, reflecting a pragmatic strategy amid a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. He believes a temporary freeze offers a feasible, realistic alternative, given the difficulty of achieving long-term denuclearization goals. Lee views the situation as precarious, acknowledging South Korea's strategic location between China, Russia, and the US. Lee's approach is driven by a desire to reduce tensions with North Korea, following his predecessor's controversial attempts to impose martial law. He seeks to maintain a balanced relationship with the US, while also navigating increasingly close ties between China, Russia, and North Korea, exemplified by the recent military parade in Beijing where Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un were present. This burgeoning alliance presents a significant challenge to South Korea's security interests. Despite concerns about China's enabling role in North Korea's nuclear program, Lee avoids direct accusations, recognizing the complexities of international relations. He emphasizes the need for continued cooperation and peaceful coexistence, even with adversarial nations. He acknowledges the importance of the UN Security Council, despite its perceived shortcomings in addressing the North Korean threat. Recent events, including the detention of Korean workers in the US and stalled trade talks with the US, have underscored the challenges facing South Korea. The incident led to a reassessment of Korean investment in the US and prompted a shift in Lee's rhetoric, emphasizing resilience and strategic positioning. He utilizes a proverb, "After the rain, the ground hardens," to illustrate his government's determination to overcome obstacles. Lee successfully secured the release of the detained workers and aims to leverage the situation to strengthen ties with Washington, demonstrating a commitment to pragmatic diplomacy and a strategic understanding of the evolving global order. Evans Kibet, a 36-year-old Kenyan athlete, found himself a prisoner of war in Ukraine after being unwittingly recruited by a Russian military agent. Driven by financial struggles and a desire for racing opportunities, Kibet accepted a trip to Russia, initially intending to participate in races. However, a sports agent offered him a longer stay, promising a job, which turned out to be military service. He signed documents without fully understanding the implications, leading to his enrollment in a military camp and subsequent forced participation, with threats of violence if he refused. Kibet underwent basic training, learning to handle firearms, and was ultimately compelled to fight, despite his insistence that he was unarmed and only seeking to survive. After a week of training, he deserted, fleeing into a forest near Vovchansk, Ukraine, and was eventually apprehended by Ukrainian soldiers, pleading for his life by stating, "I am Kenyan, please don't shoot me." The entire ordeal began with a misguided opportunity for racing, fueled by Kibet's ambition and financial difficulties. The agent's promise of a job proved to be a deceptive recruitment tactic. Kibet's family is in shock and deeply concerned for his safety, expressing relief that he is in the hands of Ukrainian forces. They are urging the Kenyan government to intervene and facilitate his repatriation. Ukrainian authorities acknowledge the situation of foreign recruits, many of whom are from poorer countries and arrive through deception or voluntary enlistment. They are open to negotiations regarding the return of such citizens, though express limited interest from other African nations. The case highlights the vulnerability of individuals seeking opportunities abroad and the potential for exploitation. Kibet's story underscores the complex and often tragic circumstances faced by foreign prisoners of war in Ukraine. The family's primary concern remains his safe return, a plea echoed by Kibet himself, emphasizing his desire to be reunited with his daughter. Negotiations are underway with the Ukrainian government regarding his return to Kenya, a process driven by the family's desperate hope for his well-being. Afghanistan's silent crisis, "Children starve as aid dries up," a devastating humanitarian crisis, is unfolding in Afghanistan, marked by widespread malnutrition and child deaths, exacerbated by a collapse in international aid. The BBC reports on the grim reality faced by families like the Mohidans, who have lost 3 children to starvation within 2 years, highlighting the profound impact of the crisis. Ghulam and Nazo, living in the Shade settlement outside Herat, struggle to survive, relying on collecting walnut shells for income and receiving no assistance from the Taliban government or NGOs. The couple's anguish is echoed across the country, with countless children facing similar fates. The World Food Programme's WFP estimates that over 3 million children are at risk of starvation, a figure dramatically increased from the beginning of the year. The primary cause is the drastic reduction in aid, stemming from the United States' cessation of nearly all aid and the departure of 8 other key donors. The Taliban's policies, particularly the restriction of women's rights and the recent ban on female NGO workers, further complicate aid delivery, creating significant obstacles for humanitarian organizations. The Taliban acknowledges the crisis, but insists its budget is constrained by sanctions. The situation is compounded by a severe drought impacting agricultural yields, forcing over 2 million Afghans to return from neighboring Iran and Pakistan, diminishing crucial remittances. Many families, like Hanifa Saidi's, are forced to resort to dangerous coping mechanisms, such as administering lorazepam and propranolol to their children to induce sleep, despite the potential for serious health consequences. Hanifa's desperation is reflected in the pleas of countless mothers, including Zamira, who cares for 3 malnourished infants in the Badakhshan Regional Hospital, fearing for their survival. Tragically, several of the children treated at the hospital, including 3-month-old Sana, 5-month-old Musliha, and twins Mutahara and Mazian, succumbed to malnutrition and related illnesses. The situation is dire, with a significant proportion of Afghan children under 5 suffering from stunting. The WFP's call centers are overwhelmed with distress calls, particularly from mothers contemplating suicide due to their inability to feed their children. The crisis represents a complex interplay of political instability, economic hardship, and a critical lack of international support, leaving a generation of Afghan children vulnerable to preventable death. Israeli strike in Lebanon kills 5 U.S. citizen claims disputed. A recent Israeli air strike in southern Lebanon resulted in the deaths of 5 individuals, prompting significant controversy, particularly regarding the nationality of the victims. The Lebanese government reported the deaths, while simultaneously, claims emerged that several U.S. citizens, specifically a father and his 3 children, were among those killed. However, the U.S. State Department has disputed these claims, stating that initial indications suggest the deceased were not American nationals. The Israeli military confirmed that a Hezbollah operator was targeted and eliminated in the town of Bint Jbeil, acknowledging the tragic loss of several uninvolved civilians. They expressed regret for any harm to non-combatants and stated that the incident is under review. The strike involved a drone firing missiles at a motorcycle and a Mercedes car, resulting in the deaths of the father and his children, who were traveling in the vehicle. The motorcyclist, the intended target, was also killed. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam denounced the attack as a massacre against civilians, accusing Israel of sending a message of intimidation toward returning residents in the south. He called for the international community to strongly condemn Israel's repeated violations of international resolutions. UNICEF expressed shock and outrage over the killing of 3 children from the same family. They emphasized that attacks on children are unconscionable and urged an immediate cessation of hostilities to protect all children. Despite a U.S.-brokered ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah last November, Israel has continued its operations in Lebanon. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, attending the UN General Assembly in New York, condemned Israel's continued violations of international resolutions and appealed to the international community for action. The incident follows Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's statements regarding Israel's victories in Lebanon, which were intended to facilitate peace talks with Syria. The situation remains tense, with ongoing concerns about the safety of civilians and the adherence to international law. UN Security Council condemns Russian airspace incursions. A heated emergency meeting of the UN Security Council convened following Estonia's accusation of 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entering its airspace over the Gulf of Finland without permission. Estonia, alongside its allies, delivered a scathing critique of Russia's actions, labeling them reckless and a breach of the UN Charter. The incident prompted Estonia to request Article 4 consultations, a mechanism allowing NATO members to formally raise security concerns with the alliance's highest political decision-making body. Key figures, including Estonia's Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna and former Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, emphasized the need for a firm stance against Russia's provocations, asserting their commitment to supporting Ukraine. The United Kingdom, represented by Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, warned that NATO is prepared to defend its airspace, explicitly stating that any unauthorized operation would be met with a defensive response. New U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Michael Waltz, reinforced this commitment, pledging to defend every inch of NATO territory. Russia vehemently denied the incursions, claiming the flights adhered to international rules and occurred within established international airspace. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov repeated this denial, accusing Estonia of escalating tensions. However, Estonia presented compelling evidence, including maps, radar recordings, and photographs of the combat-ready jets, demonstrating their crossing into Estonian airspace for 12 minutes before being intercepted by NATO. Poland's recent request for Article 4 consultations, triggered by similar Russian drone and fighter jet incursions, highlighted a growing trend of concern within NATO. Separately, Swedish and German forces scrambled to identify and monitor a Russian Il-20 reconnaissance aircraft operating without a flight plan or radio contact over the South Baltic Sea. The situation underscores heightened tensions in the region and the potential for miscalculation, prompting a significant response from the international community and solidifying NATO's defensive posture. Alaa Abdel Fattah freed after 6 years in Egyptian prison. A British-Egyptian activist, Alaa Abdel Fattah, has been released from Wadi al-Natron prison after spending 6 years imprisoned in Egypt. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ordered his pardon following a request from the National Council for Human Rights, a move welcomed by human rights groups. Abdel Fattah's sentence stemmed from a conviction for spreading false news, initially related to a prisoner's death during torture, and later a conviction for participating in an unauthorized protest. Prior to his pardon, Abdel Fattah had been detained since 2014, following the military's overthrow of President Mohamed Morsi. He has been a prominent political prisoner throughout this period, advocating for democracy and freedom of expression. His imprisonment has been marked by hunger strikes and international pressure. The decision to release Abdel Fattah followed a 9-month-long hunger strike undertaken by his 68-year-old mother, Laila Suif, a British citizen, who lost over 40% of her weight during the strike. The UK government played a significant role in advocating for his release, and diplomatic efforts were instrumental in securing the pardon. Human Rights Watch views the pardon as a potential watershed moment, hoping it will lead to an end to the wrongful detention of peaceful critics under President Sisi's rule. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention previously ruled that Abdel Fattah's arrest was arbitrary and that he was denied a fair trial. Despite acquiring British citizenship in 2021, Egypt has consistently refused to allow consular access. The activist's prolonged detention reflects a broader crackdown on dissent in Egypt, resulting in the imprisonment of tens of thousands of individuals. The release marks a significant development, but the underlying issues of human rights and freedom of expression in Egypt remain a critical concern. The timing of the pardon, following intense international scrutiny and advocacy, highlights the global pressure for justice and the recognition of Abdel Fattah's plight. Maduro offers dialogue amid U.S. tension following a U.S. strike that resulted in the deaths of 11 Venezuelans on a suspected drug boat. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has initiated contact with the Trump administration, offering direct talks through his special envoy, Richard Granell. This move comes after Maduro vehemently denied any involvement in narco-trafficking, dismissing the allegations as fake news propagated by various media outlets. The letter, dated September 6th, was shared via Telegram by Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and confirmed by a U.S. source familiar with the communication. The U.S. conducted multiple strikes against speedboats last week, raising the death toll to over a dozen individuals believed to be drug traffickers. However, the White House has yet to present conclusive evidence or intelligence data supporting the claim that those killed were indeed criminals. President Trump has not confirmed receipt of Maduro's letter, stating only that the administration will see what happens with Venezuela. The escalating tensions between the two nations have led to increased U.S. naval deployments in the region, ostensibly for drug trafficking combat, while Maduro contends that the deployments are an attempt at regime change. In response, Venezuela has initiated military exercises and showcased its Russian-built fighter jets, alongside mobilizing millions of militiamen. Maduro's letter includes what he describes as compelling data, demonstrating Venezuela's status as a territory free of drug production. He extends an invitation for constructive dialogue and mutual understanding throughout the hemisphere. Granell, previously the U.S. ambassador to Germany, has previously met with Maduro to secure the release of U.S. citizens detained in Venezuela in exchange for Venezuelan migrants sent to El Salvador. Granell recently advocated for de-escalation, expressing optimism that a deal can be reached to avert conflict. The U.S. has doubled the reward for Maduro's arrest to $50 million, highlighting the ongoing accusations against him. The situation remains volatile, with both sides engaging in displays of force and diplomatic efforts. Super Typhoon Ragasa threatens Philippines, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China. A powerful super typhoon, dubbed Ragasa in the Philippines, is currently impacting the northern Philippines, posing significant threats to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and southern China. The storm, initially generating winds of 285 km/h, has caused widespread evacuations, school closures, and infrastructure damage in the Philippines, particularly in the Babuyan Islands and Batanes. Herbert Singun reported significant damage to school roofs and widespread tree damage on Calayan Island, highlighting the storm's intensity. Over 10,000 people have been evacuated across northern Luzon, with authorities urging residents to heed evacuation warnings due to the risk of life-threatening storm surges and potential landslides. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. halted government operations and classes in Metro Manila and 29 Luzon provinces. The storm's impact extends beyond the Philippines, with Hong Kong and Taiwan issuing warnings and implementing preventative measures. PAGASE, the Philippines Meteorological Agency, has issued tropical cyclone wind signal No. 5 for the Babuyan Islands, emphasizing the potentially very destructive conditions. Ragasa is expected to pass over parts of the Asian island nation before heading toward Hong Kong and Macau and mainland China's Guangdong province. Hong Kong authorities have closed schools and suspended key transport links, including the mega bridge connecting Hong Kong, Macau, and Zhuhai, preparing for potential flooding and landslides. Taiwan has issued land and sea warnings, suspending ferry services and closing nature trails in southern and eastern counties. The storm's rapid intensification, driven by an eye-wall replacement cycle, is attributed to record high global ocean temperatures fueled by climate change. The Western Pacific is the most active tropical basin, and the increasing frequency of intense storms like Ragasa underscores the impact of a warming climate. Hong Kong is particularly vulnerable, recalling past devastating typhoons like Hato's 2017 and Mangkhut's 2018. The Hong Kong Observatory has noted a surge in extreme precipitation events, with record rainfall observed in August 2024. Cathay Pacific and Hong Kong Airlines have canceled hundreds of flights. Authorities are anticipating similar conditions to those seen in previous storms, prompting widespread preparations and safety measures. Trump urges Department of Justice to prosecute political opponents. President Donald Trump recently issued a strong call to Attorney General Pam Bondi, urging her to aggressively investigate and prosecute his political adversaries. In a social media post, Trump expressed frustration with what he perceived as a lack of action, stating that nothing is being done regarding investigations into figures like former FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. He repeatedly characterized these individuals as guilty as hell, highlighting his belief that investigations were being deliberately delayed. The president's statement followed the resignation of federal prosecutor Eric Siebert, who Trump demanded step down for failing to pursue charges against Letitia James over allegations of mortgage fraud. James, a Democrat who successfully sued Trump in 2023, has dismissed the allegations as baseless and driven by revenge. Critics, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, condemned Trump's remarks, asserting that this approach represents a dangerous path toward authoritarianism. Schumer emphasized the importance of maintaining the Justice Department's integrity, noting its historical independence from partisan influence, regardless of the administration in power. He argued that Trump was weaponizing the department to target political opponents, irrespective of their guilt or innocence. Trump defended his request, insisting that action must be taken fast. He lauded Attorney General Pam Bondi, stating she would be one of the best attorney generals of the ages. The situation underscores a growing tension between the executive branch and the Justice Department, raising concerns about the potential politicization of law enforcement and the rule of law. The ongoing dispute centers around accusations of wrongdoing against prominent Democratic figures, fueling partisan divisions and highlighting the challenges of maintaining impartiality within the legal system. Republican representative challenges Trump's sentiment ahead of his upcoming retirement from Congress. Republican Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska has offered a notable challenge to former President Donald Trump, stating his dislike for his political opponent. This revelation emerged during a CNN interview with Manu Raju, part of the Inside Politics Sunday with Manu Raju program, scheduled to air Sunday at 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The interview was conducted as Bacon prepares to leave office next year, a period marked by his willingness to publicly question Trump's decisions during his second term. Bacon's statement represents a rare instance of a Republican lawmaker directly voicing opposition to Trump, particularly within a key battleground district. This suggests a growing dissatisfaction within certain segments of the Republican Party regarding Trump's actions and policies. The interview's focus on Bacon's perspective highlights the internal divisions within the GOP, where some members, like Bacon, are willing to go against the former president's direction. The interview with Manu Raju served as a platform for Bacon to articulate his concerns, indicating a willingness to challenge Trump's stance on critical issues. Bacon's position is significant given his representation of a challenging district, suggesting a broader sentiment among voters and Republican strategists. The Inside Politics Sunday broadcast will provide a full recording of this important conversation, allowing viewers to fully understand Bacon's perspective and the context surrounding his statement. The interview underscores the ongoing tensions within the Republican Party and the evolving dynamics of the 2024 presidential race. Rural health clinics closing amidst Trump administration policy changes. The closure of 3 rural health clinics in Virginia, spearheaded by Augusta Medical Group, is directly linked to President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, highlighting significant political risks associated with the legislation. The closures, occurring 2 months after the bill signing, underscore the detrimental impact of reduced federal health spending on vulnerable rural communities. Democratic gubernatorial nominee Abigail Spamberger is actively campaigning in Buena Vista, a town losing its clinic, to improve the party's standing with rural voters ahead of the fall elections. The Republican response, led by Virginia GOP Executive Director Ken Nunnenkamp, defends the closures as a consolidation aimed at providing better, more consistent, and more accessible service. However, veteran Democratic strategist Marshall Cohen warns that this is the tip of the iceberg, anticipating further closures nationwide. Under the legislation, Medicaid spending is projected to decline by over $900 billion over 10 years, leading to an estimated 7.5 million more uninsured individuals. Work requirements, a key component of the bill, are expected to disproportionately affect rural areas where employment opportunities may be limited. Republicans have established a $50 billion rural health fund to mitigate these cuts, inviting all 50 states to apply for funding. Dr. Mehmet Oz, administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, views this fund as a historic investment, intended to thrive rural health systems. Despite this initiative, critics argue that $50 billion will be insufficient, as projected by the Kaiser Family Foundation, which estimates a $137 billion decline in rural Medicaid spending, exceeding the fund's allocation. Virginia LT Gov. Winsome Earl Sears and GOP gubernatorial nominee Glenn Youngkin have proposed tapping the state's rainy day fund, holding $4.7 billion, to supplement funding. However, Spamberger contends this fund is inadequate, stating, "This is not a rainy day. This is a bad bill that came out of Washington." Pete Barlow, a Democratic candidate challenging Klein, emphasizes the administration's bloody axe approach to rural health care, expressing frustration among community members who are not immediately connecting the policy changes to their losses of services. Rural Ground Game's Lindley Thorne stresses the importance of listening to rural voters and discussing solutions, acknowledging the need to address the gap created by the policy shifts. Exit polls reveal Trump's strong support in rural areas, highlighting the political challenge for Democrats in these regions. The situation underscores the growing concerns about the long-term impact of the legislation on rural healthcare access and the potential for increased political division. Trump administration expands AI use in immigration enforcement. The Trump administration is dramatically increasing its reliance on artificial intelligence to bolster immigration enforcement efforts, a shift marked by the deployment of Immigration OS, a new platform consolidating data and automating enforcement processes. The system, developed with assistance from Palantir, aims to streamline operations, from raids and arrests to deportation flights, and is being utilized by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, AICE. This expansion leverages data from diverse sources, including Treasury and IRS records, alongside traditional immigration data. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons described the initiative as like Prime, but with human beings, highlighting the system's efficiency. Immigration OS incorporates workflows allowing agents to approve actions, generate legal documents, and route individuals for detention or removal, all within a single interface. Palantir's involvement has raised concerns about vendor lock-in and potential over-reliance on a single technology provider. Critics warn of potential biases, reduced human oversight, and the risk of algorithmic decision-making impacting enforcement actions. The system's accessibility to ground-level officers, rather than centralized control, further amplifies these concerns, potentially leading to decentralized enforcement. Furthermore, the administration is utilizing AI to augment the work of I-9 auditors, streamlining the process of verifying employment eligibility. However, this efficiency could diminish human judgment, a point repeatedly emphasized by former DHS officials. The administration's embrace of AI is not entirely new. ICE has historically utilized technology to combat terrorism threats. However, the scale and scope of this new initiative, combined with Palantir's involvement, represent a fundamental shift. Former DHS officials express apprehension about the potential for unchecked algorithmic influence and the importance of maintaining human oversight. They stress that while AI tools can be valuable, they are not a substitute for human judgment. The debate centers on how this technology is deployed, rather than simply whether it can be useful. The administration's stated goal of ramping up arrests underscores the strategic importance of this technological advancement. The H-1B visa controversy, a disruptive shift in U.S.-India tech relations. A recent executive order by President Trump dramatically increased the cost of H-1B visas for skilled workers, sparking widespread concern and uncertainty within the U.S. tech industry and particularly among Indian professionals. The order, imposing a $100,000 fee for new applicants, followed a weekend of confusion and a subsequent White House clarification that the fee applied only to new hires. This move immediately caused panic among Indian tech workers and prompted U.S. companies to advise staff against international travel. The H-1B visa program has been a cornerstone of the relationship between the U.S. and India, facilitating the movement of Indian professionals to American companies and significantly contributing to the growth of the U.S. tech sector. For decades, the program has enabled Indian coders and engineers to earn high salaries and contribute to innovation, while simultaneously bolstering the U.S. economy with over $806 billion in annual economic contributions. However, the new fee structure is widely viewed as detrimental, potentially disrupting business continuity and creating labor shortages. Experts predict that the increased cost will discourage new H-1B applications and could force companies to rely more on offshore delivery and remote contracting. Several large tech firms, including Google, Microsoft, and IBM, have a significant number of Indian executives, and the visa hike threatens their operations. The impact extends beyond the tech sector, affecting universities reliant on international student enrollment, particularly Indian students who represent a significant portion of the student body. The timing of the announcement, coinciding with September enrollment periods, has left many new arrivals stunned and facing substantial sunk costs. Industry bodies like NASSCOM and the North American Association of Indian Students express serious concerns about the long-term consequences, predicting a potential exodus of talent and a shift in educational choices. Legal challenges to the order are anticipated, and the possibility of exemptions for major tech companies is being discussed. The overall effect is expected to be a significant test for the U.S. economy, potentially impacting innovation, competitiveness, and the nation's ability to attract and retain top talent. The disruption could also lead to a reassessment of U.S. immigration policies and a broader strategic shift in the global technology landscape. The H-1B program's future hangs in the balance, with significant ramifications for both the United States and India.